All right. Hello, YouTube. My name is Alan, and it's that time once again. Let's talk some metal. Going to do kind of a short and to the point of video this evening. Wanted to focus on a few 12-inch singles from the US heavy metal scene of the 1980s. This is a topic we've covered before and seen some pretty cool examples of different 12-inch singles. It's a format that doesn't really exist anymore, at least not in heavy metal veins. But once upon a time, bands did put these out sometimes. Uh, it was a way to get something that was, I guess, a larger, more visible format than a 7-inch single, had more room for cover art and photos and stuff like that. So maybe bands felt like it was going to, get a record buyer's attention a little bit more than a 7-inch single, which it was not a format that was particularly in vogue as you moved through the 1980s. So for tonight's selection, I've picked out one very well-known example of a 12-inch heavy metal single, and two that are a little bit lesser known. Because hi, my name is Alan, and this is what I do. I come up with weird heavy metal records that a lot of folks may not be familiar with, try to give them their 5 minutes of fame in the spotlight, play you a few clips so you can check them out for yourself. All right, so tonight's first entry is a band that most fans of 1980s heavy metal are going to know and love. It is none other than Warlord. Warlord's second official vinyl product on Metal Blade was a 12-inch single. Features the songs Lost in Lonely Days, and the backside has the track Aliens on it. We will go to the tape here and check out a clip from the Lost in Lonely Days side of this 12-inch single. So here we go. All right, there is a sample of Warlord's classic, Lost and Lonely Days. So this one came out in 1984. The band had done their Deliverous EP a year earlier, in 1983. There was a change behind the microphone on this one. The vocals are credited to Damian King II, as opposed to Damian King I, who had done a lot of their demos and the Deliverous EP. The band went through vocalists pretty regularly there in the early days. Interestingly, the vocalists were all quite good, but those early guys didn't really have any further doings in heavy metal music. When you look them up on Metal Archives, that was pretty much their only contribution, which is kind of sad. Although the lead vocalist on the EP, I think his name was John Rucker, he had played with a 70s hard rock, maybe sort of early metal band called Alcana, and performed on their excellent LP, which unfortunately is very rare and very collectible, but has some excellent tunes on it. I've talked about it in another video. Warlord, of course, Bill Sammies on guitar would go on and work with Lordian Guard as kind of a semi-solo project with his wife. Mark Zonder, aka Thunderchild, on drums would go on and play with Fate's Warning, had a long career with them, is widely recognized as, one of the real, expert technical drummers, from that early era of heavy metal. So yeah, a very talented band. Was more or less just a studio project, but nevertheless, they really made a mark on, classic traditional metal, very influential in power metal circles later on, and even, progressive metal. This was a talented band that Had they been able to establish a solid lineup, get out and tour, could have become, a really big name in heavy metal during the 1980s. And instead, they're one of those great what if stories, a well kept secret that really isn't a secret anymore. Most serious fans of 80s heavy metal will know Warlord, and you hear very few people say disparaging things about the band. A lot of bands, some people like them, some people don't. Warlord is one of those bands that comes relatively close to near universal accolades from the heavy metal community. And in my opinion, rightfully so. They didn't release a ton of material, but what they released was absolutely excellent. All right, we got to move on to our second entry for the evening, however. And that one is a 12-inch single by a band called Snow White. If you're thinking in terms of Disney characters, not really the heaviest of names you could have come up with. I guess Philadelphia already had Cinderella cornered, and so they took the next best Disney princess. It's better than calling your band Rose Red or Elsa. I guess that one came a lot later. Anyway, I'm getting off track. The name may not be heavy, but they did make up for it by putting a really cool mushroom cloud on the cover of the 12-inch single. Now, this one, it's listed as an EP on some sites because there are 3 named tracks on it. However, the first track, Prophecy, is just an introduction. It's not really a standalone song. So, as far as I'm concerned, there's only 2 real songs on this, and that qualifies it as a 12-inch single. So, what do Snow White sound like? Well, let's check out one of these 2 songs. We'll play a clip from the track New Messiah. As usual, I'm going to skip into the song a little bit. There's, about 50 seconds of introduction here we don't need to hear. So let's get right to the good part of New Messiah by Snow White. All right, so there's some of New Messiah by Snow White. Snow White kind of gets an extra asterisk next to their name for being from the state of Alaska. Not exactly a burning hot heavy metal scene there in the Great White North, but yeah, if you're trying to round out your collection of a heavy metal album from all 50 states, first you might want to rethink some of your life choices because that's a weird goal, but I bet some of you do it. I'm not saying I'm not doing it, but we're not talking about me. We're talking about you, and we're talking about Snow White. And this is, yes, a way to have something representing the great state of Alaska in heavy metal circles. To my knowledge, it's the only thing the band released. There's no mention of demos that have come across online or later material. The little stamp that I was showing on the cover while the clip was playing indicates that, yes, features selected cuts from the forthcoming album New Messiah. Spoiler alert, there never was an album called New Messiah that got released. I don't know if the band fell apart before it could be recorded. I don't know if it was recorded and canned because nobody was interested. I have no idea. Kind of seems like by this point, somebody would have tracked the band down and put out the album if the tapes had been assembled and just never got a release. So I'm guessing maybe the project didn't make it very far along before it fell apart. I've heard some people complain about the Snow White release as being not that great. I don't think it's really that bad. Vocalist has a pretty good, strong delivery, belts it out okay. The musicianship is solid. You're talking about an independently released 12-inch single recorded in the state of Alaska. You can't exactly expect Rust in Peace levels of technicality and production here. For what it is, I think it delivers all right. The songs, yes, they could have a few more dynamics to them. They could mix it up just a little bit more. The pace does maybe plod just a little bit. I'm not saying it's perfect, but I'm saying it deserves a little more love than maybe it's gotten from some folks in heavy metal circles. It is considered a relatively collectible slab of vinyl, and hey, why not? It's Alaskan metal from 1985. Gotta give it some props for that, if nothing else. All right, but enough about the one and done release from Alaska's Snow White. We've got one more item to cover this evening, and this is another sort of relatively different one. This is out of the San Francisco area, so immediately you're thinking like, Bay Area thrash, but that's not what we've got here at all. What we've got is a band with a name that could actually challenge Snow White for a head scratcher. It is Malibu Barbie and their 12-inch single called Rude Girls, written on the cross over there on the side. This cover has got things going on here. I'm not sure exactly what's up with the heavy metal mermaid down here, because it looks like at first her posterior's got kind of normal human anatomy, but then there's, the legs somehow merge into a fishtail slightly further down. That does not seem like a good anatomical design for a human or for a fish or for somebody who's half human, half fish. Whoever drew this, I don't think has a background in vertebrate anatomy, but perhaps I'm expecting too much from my cover illustrations for a 1987 12-inch heavy metal single. Before we talk about Malibu Barbie anymore, and boy, those are not words you expect to ever hear yourself say when you're doing a heavy metal music video. But yeah, let's go to the tape and check out one of these songs. Then we'll talk about this band a little bit more. So the one we've got dialed up here for your listening pleasure this evening is the track Lords of the Night. So here is Malibu Barbie, 1987, Lords of the Night. Let's see what we've got. All right, there's Malibu Barbie playing Lords of the Night on their 12-inch EP from 1987. Pretty damn good and pretty damn heavy. It's got almost a little bit of a doomy atmosphere going on. If I didn't know better, I would guess the band was, mid 1980s Chicago scene. A lot of bands from Chicago had that kind of vibe to them. But this is a San Francisco band, and this came out in 87. As you saw from the band pictures, it's a female band, and one of their claims to fame is that, and you may have recognized the vocals, but the singing here is done by Leather Leone, who, of course, most notably has sung on a lot of the Chastain albums, but also sung with other projects. She's got a pretty distinct, very sort of heavy, almost gravelly voice for a female metal vocalist. So it turns out to be a pretty cool little EP. Now, the flip side, When Lightning Strikes, has a footnote you may have noticed on the back cover that says it's dedicated to the memory of Cliff Burton. I don't know if they knew Cliff personally, being from the San Francisco heavy metal scene. They probably had crossed paths or at least knew of him. I don't know if there were any stronger connections there, if they had played shows with Trauma or with Metallica at some point, or if it was just a way to sort of salute this coming out in 87, soon after he had passed away. Now, Malibu Barbie did have a few other recordings. This wasn't the only thing they did back in the day. They did have, sorry, let me double check things here, because they had a demo that came out the year before, 1986. And then they had another release, an EP called Ain't Life Swell, but that one didn't come out until 1982, or sorry, 1992. It was about 5 years after the Rude Girls 12-inch single. So that's a big 5-year gap. 5 years is a big time between releases to begin with, but from 87 to 92, there were a lot of changes in the heavy metal universe and just, the music business in general. Now, Leather does not sing on the EP. By that time, she had moved on. So the EP is something I've not heard in a long time, but I did pull up one of the songs to check out. I remember it being quite different in style. So, but let's let the music do the talking, and you can judge for yourselves. So let's see. Oh, we'll go with track number 1. It's called Chameleon. No heavy metal song called Chameleon or having to do with chameleons could ever be bad, right? There's something about chameleons and heavy metal that just don't seem to mix properly. So, public service announcement to fledgling bands out there: don't name your album or your song Chameleon. It works if you're kind of a post-punk British band. Doesn't seem to translate into heavier music. Just gonna leave it at that. Yeah, the EP is in a very different style. Doesn't really have that same heavy quality that the Rude Girls 12-inch did from 5 years earlier. So it goes. All right, that was the end of the line for Malibu Barbie, and that's the end of the line for this particular video. So now let's talk metal in the comments down below. Other 12-inch singles that you really like and enjoy. I've shown off a few. It's not something I have a lot of, so I'd be interested to see if there are others that folks are familiar with that I've never come across. Talked about some others from the US scene. There's obviously a lot from the new wave of British heavy metal scene. But what are some of your favorite things that came out on this particular format? Leave a comment down below so that other folks, myself included, can check them out and maybe find some of the gems that you know about the rest of us just don't. All right, until next time, everybody take care, and as always, keep banging your head.